I think each person is placed on the planet to serve a specific group of people, and they're uniquely qualified to do it. All of their experiences are setting them up for it. They have insight and perspective that only they have because of their experience.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast presented by Cornerstone International Alliance. I'm your host, Nick Olson. On this show, I get the opportunity to talk with the brightest minds in lower middle market M&A. Together, we discuss industry intelligence, deal management, shared successes, specialized expertise, and much more. If you serve the small to medium-sized business owner, this show will offer you tactics and insights you can use and implement now to become a master in M&A. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast. Today's guest is Jerome Myers, founder of Exit Excellence, and one of the leading voices on the human side of exit planning. As a certified exit planning advisor, author, and founder-focused strategist, Jerome helps business owners prepare not just for the transaction, but for what comes after. After building a $20 million division inside a Fortune 500 company and working on a private equity deal delivering 3x plus returns, he noticed a pattern. Many founders were financially prepared to exit, but personally unprepared for what came next. That insight led him to develop frameworks like the transaction illusion and the founder's exit paradox, which challenge how we think about successful exit. Today, we will be diving into what really happens after the deal closes and how advisors can better prepare clients for life beyond the transaction. Jerome, I'm really excited to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Nick, what a pleasure, man. And thanks to Scott for putting us together. Scott Snyder from the EPI. This is so cool when doors open like that. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was like I mentioned before, Scott came up to Green Bay for our State of M&A event, and I'm like, I want to dive into your ecosystem, in the Exit Planning Institute more. Who are people I need to talk to, need to have on the show? And you were at the top of the list, so glad to have you here, Jerome. But for our listeners, tell us a little bit about Exit to Excellence and the company that you built and the work that you do and who you are serving.
Yeah, so typically our founders are having mid-8-figure exits, and we're solving the problem of what do I do after I exit? I think so few people think about what they're exiting to. They really just focus on what they're exiting from, and it's not their fault. The fact of the matter is the industry spends all their time optimizing the business for the transaction, and the founders left to figure it out on their own, the transition that they're going to go through and what life looks like when they are the former owner of, or the post-exit founder, or as we like to call them, the newly exited operator, or a NEO. And so we help them figure that out. And ideally, we would do that before they exit so that all of their decisions as they're moving through the exit process are in alignment with their post-exit desires.
I'd heard the acronym NEO before, the nearly exiting operator. I like that. So you, Jerome, from the outside, selling a business looks like the finish line, right? But your argument is it's often the beginning of the hardest part. What are most people missing, and what do they need to know about what this hardest part actually is?
Yeah, we call it the transaction illusion. So many people think about the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And once I get the money, everything's going to be better. And the fact of the matter is most advisors disappear at the point of liquidity. So they don't really have a point of reference for how the founder experiences what we call the founder's exit paradox once they have their liquidity event and separate from their business. Unfortunately, 75% of business owners regret their exit after a year. And it's not often because of the money, contrary to what popular belief would say. It's they have a loss of purpose. They've lost their most important relationships. They question who they are without the business as the thing that anchors their identity. Then there's health and questions around prosperity. But the fact of the matter is their whole world shifts because the thing that was anchoring them is gone. Unfortunately or unfortunately for most people, business, work, job anchors their life, and all the decisions are made around that. So once you remove that, you have this feeling of, it's almost like weightlessness, like gravity has been removed. And if you don't have something to tether to, you just kind of float or drift away.
When did you start realizing this was an issue? I know you have a very much a storied career, as I said in the intro.
Yeah.
But, why is there something that happened where you started noticing this that you're like, this is a real problem.
Yeah. So the first time I experienced it was when I left the division that I built. I had 175 people on my team. We were doing $20 million a year of revenue with 30% profit margins. I was employee 2, right? So to go from 2 to 175 was miraculous, and thinking we did it in 9 months just kind of allows you to see the trajectory. But when I walked out, I didn't have a plan on what I was exiting to. I didn't know who I was going to help. I didn't have a problem to solve. I just knew that I didn't want to do that anymore. And that was because we were laying people off every year. But it wasn't until I was standing in the back of a ballroom in Carlsbad, California, and a guy was given a 7-step plan to a double unicorn exit. I didn't really believe that you could have a 7-step plan for a double unicorn exit. But what was really interesting about the presentation was about 45 minutes in, he said, "Hey, I had an existential crisis." I didn't really know what that meant. It was the first time I heard the term. And he went on to say that I lost my identity. And my wife told me when I was going to In-N-Out Burger to pick up a job application, because she could tell when I was being stimulated mentally and when I wasn't. And I was a sad panda. I smiled about it. And then when I got the microphone during the Q&A session, I said, "Well, how'd you get out of your crisis?" And he kind of laughed and he said, "Well, I'll let you know when I do." And then he went on to say, people don't really care about the crisis. They don't care about my problems. They don't care about my challenges. They think I have enough money and I should be able to figure it out. And I don't want to sound tone deaf, because the fact of the matter is these aren't real problems. And that was the point where I disagree with him. It is a real problem. It is his experience. It is his challenge. It is his struggle. It is the reality of the situation. He was drifting. And so I went, because he felt the same thing I felt. I just didn't have the words to describe it. And so I went and started looking for resources. And the only thing I found was an article from Harvard Business Review that said, "Congratulations, you sold your business, prepare to be depressed." And then it went on to describe, and I questioned it. I was like, is that the reality of somebody who spends 15 to 50 years building something, that they sell it and then they're depressed? And I went on this quest and started researching and looked at positive psychology and all these other different models, just try to figure out, like, what do you apply against this issue so that you can have a resolution or solution to it. And we've tried it over and over again. And what we found is that founders are seeking purpose, but they don't have a real definition for it. And we've boiled it down to 2 things: people and a problem. And if we can help the founder pre-exit identify people and a problem that they want to solve for post-exit, they're anchored in something and they can start working on that so that they can exit to purpose versus exiting from the company that they built, because that company's very likely not their legacy. It is just something that they've created that allows them to generate money. And then once they get their time, talent, and treasure back, once they do the liquidity event, they can then take that and apply it against the thing that's truly going to create their legacy.
You mentioned people and a problem, something to look for after the exit. Can you maybe define a little bit more what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that the problem is something that you want to eradicate from the face of the planet. And the people is a group that you have an affinity to or for. I think each person is placed on the planet to serve a specific group of people, and they're uniquely qualified to do it. All of their experiences are setting them up for it. They have insight and perspective that only they have because of their experience, that will allow them to attract the people who are walking down the path that they have walked down, or looking for the experiences that they need or the advisory that they need from somebody who's already done the thing that they're trying to do. And the problem is, again, just something that you simply want to eradicate from the face of the planet. Sometimes you've been wronged in a way and you don't want anybody else to experience it. Other times it can be it impacted somebody that you care deeply about and you didn't have the ability or the resources to fix it for that person, but you want to make sure that you do it for someone else.
So you talk about doing this work pre-transaction, right? So why is that so important? Because, the exit process, the exit planning process and then the actual exit process are very involved with, making sure the business is ready to sell, that you're going to get the highest value, that's going to get you the structure that you desire and things like that. Um, what point are you bringing this into the equation, into the conversation with your clients to make sure that they are thinking about what's life like after you sell the business?
Say the last part again.
So at what point are you bringing in, this sort of work on, the
The
thinking about
time.
after the sale? Like, when are you starting to talk about that when you're working with these clients, before the transaction?
Yeah, I mean, so when the person starts thinking about exiting, they should start thinking about what they're going to exit to. And I think people are like, oh, is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 3 months? Like, do you do it right before the transaction? What happens when people get into due diligence is all they can focus on is keeping the business running in due diligence. And so if you're
Right.
in due diligence, it's too late. It
Right.
doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's just that the mental bandwidth is restricted and the ability to be creative and exploratory kind of goes. So from our perspective, when the inkling, the desire, the interest to exit rises, we want to start having the conversation about, well, what does it look like on the backside of the exit? Because what we found in some instances for people who've done our next intensive is that exiting isn't the right answer for them right now. Like, there's still work to be done in the business that they're in. And then in the future, there's a thing that we've identified, the people in the problem, that they can exit to. But the work right now is to either grow the value of the business, change the business so it's less owner dependent, insert whatever optimization metric you want to use in order to let the founder have a great experience or optimized transaction.
Do you have an example of a client you worked with that got a really good deal on the business, but struggled post sale, struggled with life after their exit?
Yeah, it's funny. We helped a financial services company exit, and it had multiple partners. And so one partner dove into the work with us. The majority partner did not. And so their exit experiences were very different after the liquidity event. So the founder who did not, or he was actually the founder, he wasn't just a partner, he was a founder. He'd been doing it for over 50. And in this instance, they had like a mid 8-figure sell, and there was an earnout. And so he ended up working more than he was working when he owned the company outright because they had a retention period. He did not enjoy his experience with the acquirer. He felt compelled to get all the money that he was owed. And so in this working more than he was working before he sold the company for salary to get a $3 million, which is a pretty small percentage of his net worth now, he's spending the last few quality years of his life on chasing a pre-liquidity metric, right? I watch people who don't have a better answer, so they continue to try to solve the money problem even though they have more money than they intend to spend, they intend to give away. And the curse of more consumes them. And so I'm watching him do this. He's got his other thing that he could do, and he's just slow walking it. And there's this group of people that I believe is placed on this planet to serve who aren't getting the best of him because they're getting the leftovers because he's enamored with this carrot that has been put out there that isn't going to make a difference in the quality of life that he has, whether he lives to 80 or 150. Now, the
That's
person that engaged with us, very different experience. In fact, she walked away from some of the bonuses because her people and problem was so compelling that she wanted to go do that immediately.
Very interesting. You got a case study within your own within your own client right there with two different people. That poses another question to me. You talk about an earnout, so whether it's an earnout or the business owner's rolling equity, they're not fully out of the business, right? So there's kind of that transition period. Is there anything you do differently, or how you're talking to them, or is it you're still considering that period like post liquidity event, or is it something different?
No, I think once you have the transaction, if it's structured well, your work optional, right? And so whether you get the earnout or not, I don't think it's really all that important. We actually encourage people not to do the earnout. We encourage them to take their money and diversify it into whatever the thing is that they feel most comfortable placing their capital into. But we want them to have their time and talent deployed against a problem that they really want solved. That's where the passion comes from. Just continuing to do the thing that you've been doing because it's routine or habit, right or wrong, I consider it lazy.
So, Jerome, you're in the exit planning world. You have your SEPA and all those great things. So your role is really to help the business owner prepare for this exit. Where do you think? Obviously, like I said, as part of our discussion, you identify that there is this gap, this issue for owners, that they need this purpose, they need after, and think about what it means afterwards. And a lot of times when you talk to business owners, like, yeah, I'm going to golf, I got to join a country club and I'm going to golf and we're going to travel, and like that only serves this purpose, for a short period of time, or are they really going to do that? But where do you think, just in the exit planning world right now, maybe it comes up a little bit short in preparing preparing the business owner for life after the deal, and how can we improve that?
Yeah, I don't think the conversation is being had about what post-exit life actually looks like. It's in every transaction advisor's best interest to only focus on the liquidity event, because many of them take a piece of the deal and they get paid at that point and they vanish. And so if you imagine you got all these people helping you climb up the mountain, you get to the top of the mountain, you hit the summit, and then that's the equivalent of the liquidity event. And when you look around after the money comes, everybody vanishes. And now you, as a business owner, have to get back down the mountain, but you don't have anybody going down the mountain with you. If you know anything about mountaineering, you know that the descent is the most deadly phase of that adventure. And so I believe that more of us need to be helping founders, owners, NEOs get back home safely. And it's kind of difficult to sell that to business owners because they're looking for a return on the investment and they undervalue what it means to actually move through the portal, come back home safely, and enjoy a life that was designed and is intentional versus one that just kind of happened and they fell into it. And they think that they're making high quality decisions in an environment that they don't have any structure in. Time and time again, we see them making decisions that negatively impact the outcome because they're trying to replace the stuff that they had prior to the exit.
This episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast is powered by Cornerstone International Alliance, where leading M&A firms come together. As part of this international network, you get access to global opportunities, over 200 M&A experts, enhanced collaboration and knowledge sharing, and some of the best M&A tools and resources available, all to help you take your firm to the next level. Ready to join this exclusive network? Visit cornerstoneia.com/new member today. Do you think advisors are shying away from this conversation?
Absolutely.
And why do you think that is?
Because you don't want to scare the founder off, one. Like, many exit advisors look at it as getting a couple married. They're wedding planners. I just got to get them to say I do. And then if they stay married, it's not my problem. Just got to get them to consummate the deal. The reality is exiting when the founder isn't ready is a traumatic experience. And all that many of us exit advisors want to do is to get paid. for getting them the thing that they said they want. Unfortunately, they don't know what they don't know. And so avoiding this conversation allows them to sit in that ignorant bliss. But again, I just don't think it's the right answer for the founder. And it creates a poor reputation for us as an industry.
For our listeners, whether it's the exit advisor or the M&A advisor helping with the transaction, what are some tips and tricks or best practices that you can share with the audience on how to start that conversation in a way that's meaningful and helpful? And then are there things you should be asking the business owner to kind of get them to maybe not be so reserved and maybe openly, embrace this conversation because it is so meaningful?
Yeah, asking the question, hey, what are you going to do after your exit is the easiest way to start the conversation. And if they say golf, gardening, grandkids, they're not ready to exit because they don't have a plan. I like to follow up that question with, well, how many days did you take off last year? And usually I find that the answer is less than 30. And so when somebody says, oh, well, I'm going to take 6 months off or I'm going to take a year off, you've never done that in your life. Why do you think you're going to be able to do that successfully post exit? And they'll have the things, and we'll try our best to bring them back to reality so that they lock in and come up with a plan, because you get extra 40 to 60 hours a week back. There's but so much TV, gardening, golf you're going to do. And, I think about operators as nuclear power plants. Like, you've got to take the energy off. Somebody shared with me, no, they're more like big breed dogs. And if you don't tire them out, then they're going to create work for themselves. So they're going to dig up the flower bed. They're going to bite the bumper on the car. They're going to tear up shoes because they have this energy that they need to express in a certain way. And I don't think that magically goes away because X amount of dollars is in your bank account.
Right. It's just their way of life. It's like you said before, they've been doing this for 40, 50 years and that's all they know. And all of a sudden be like, okay, now I don't have this thing. If you're, how's the saying go? If you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail. And, and if you're not preparing for what you're going to do afterwards, you're going to find yourself like, okay, what's next? You mentioned you in your work, you say exiting to versus exiting from, right? What does that mean? And how does that shift change in this planning process that the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think in the traditional exit planning space, exiting from is the mode. I've got this asset, I've got this business, I'm going to turn it into money. I'm going to get somebody to buy it. And all of the focus is on this thing that I have that I'm going to walk away from. When I was interviewing a guy named Rick Edelman, he called it the void. And so when you exit that way, you exit into a void because nothing on the other side is defined other than the amount of money that you're going to get. When we talk about exiting to, we talk about designing that future before you exit. And it's kind of crude, but if you think about relationships, for most people, it's a whole lot easier to get over your old relationship when you got a new one that you're moving into. And so we think about it like that. We want to have this new thing that we're excited about, this new thing that's pulling at us and we're infatuated with when we're moving through the transaction process, so that we have something to go do on the other side of the transaction. It's not about just getting this thing done. It's about creating space for us to go do the thing that we really wanted.
Yeah, I like that. And it's the positive versus the negative, because negative is like you're going from something, and it's not negative, but I mean it's like taken away as opposed to going towards something that you're embracing. Do you find that if you've identified what they're exiting to, are they more engaged? Are they more, in the process, the exiting, the actual the sale process, or are they maybe more positive and excited, or as opposed to maybe if they're exiting from something, maybe they're a little bit more stressed and anxious and whatnot. Do you see that at all? Or
Yeah, I love that question because I think it illuminates a point. Like clarity is the thing that creates certainty. And so what we find is if you know what you're exiting to, you know what decision you have to make in order to set that thing up. When you're exiting from, you're wishy-washy. You're questioning all of this stuff. You don't have a reason to do it. You have a bunch of reasons not to do it because fear of the unknown, fear of the uncertainty, the doubt that's created by moving something that was so central to your life is scary. And, you're nervous about it. Excitement about the new thing has some of the same energy because there's a little bit of anxiety in both of those, but you've got a positive emotion around it. And so the demeanor, the reason for doing it is much, much higher for a person that is thinking about to versus from.
Yeah, and I would imagine the psychology that of the deal would be just a lot more positive, a lot more, um, you know, um, as opposed to just that nervousness, that unknown. Like I love that you said clarity is something that is helpful to understand where you're going to. I love that. What are some warning signs that you see that maybe the founder is financially ready, but not personally ready? Maybe they're unprepared for what's about to come in the next couple of months when they don't have that business anymore.
Yeah, I think the first thing is they don't have anything in their life going on outside of things connected to their business. Their whole identity is wrapped up in it. They can't say the business without themselves. They can't talk about themselves without talking about the business. Step one. Step two, typically when we look at the relationships of 5 people they spend the most time with, 3 of those 5 or 60% are related to the business. And we think 60% is too high a percentage for somebody that's going to be exit ready because they're going to feel an extreme sense of loneliness. And the fact of the matter is the other 2 in that 5 is usually their spouse and their kids. So they just go back to family and then they have no outside interaction. That's painful for the family. And that's painful for them because they don't have anybody they're connected to. And then I think the last thing is the due diligence process, the exit journey is one that is challenging, is physically challenging. And if they're in poor health, the stress of going through that can be extremely difficult and taxing on their body. And, when they get post exit, they very quickly see how they were running off of adrenaline and cortisol. And that those negative impacts that those 2 chemicals have on the body because they're made for short stints, not for extended periods, it creates a situation where they find health issues that they didn't know that they had.
If an advisor sees some of these warning signs that you just mentioned, what's maybe some advice you'd give them and how they could help the situation?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a tool specifically to help pull these things out at the beginning of the experience. We call it exit readiness assessment. And so if somebody wants to use it with their client, they just have their client fill it out. They get a report. They don't have to talk to anybody. Nobody's going to bother them, but it's going to show them across 7 different areas how ready they actually are. And then from there, they can start having conversations to fill those gaps. And the report gives them recommendations on what they should do or could do in order to be exit ready. And so that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is if you don't do that, but you just notice that there's some things that are popping up for your client, that you be a human, right? And you actually ask them and you hold space and give them opportunity to talk about it. Right or wrong, most people aren't going to say anything about how they're feeling if they're not given the opportunity to. But exiting is messy, and many people just ignore it, turn a blind eye because they don't know what to do with it or how to deal with it. But holding the space for them is often very helpful. And then after letting them express what they're going through, I think you can either ask them if they would like some referrals or ask them if they have a plan for how they're going to deal with it and help them get the support that they need so that they can have a successful exit. Because I can tell you, like, the most difficult clients are the ones that aren't ready personally. They're trying to force or create something. They're making friction. They're sabotaging the deal because they're scared of what's going to happen post exit, or they don't know what they want post exit. And so they're going to cling to the thing that they do have.
That brings up another good point. Now, talking specifically to the transaction work, the M&A advisor, you always try to have a conversation with a client to understand if it's a mutually, you know, beneficial relationship, because you're going to go through some ups and downs, and you're going to be together for 6, 8, 12 months, who knows, depending on how long the transaction can take. And so you got to understand, you try to do as much as you can up front, but as you get into the transaction, and you can see these, you talk about self-sabotage because they're just not ready personally. What are some things that the M&A advisor can look for, or how can they start that conversation mid-deal? Because maybe you're like, that was really weird, like, is there something bigger going on here that you would do that thing? Like, I'm thinking like mid-deal, like, how can we identify that self-sabotage, and how can we kind of get them back on track to to go down the process and making sure they are actually ready?
Yeah. I mean, by the time they're sabotaging the deal, I don't know that there's a whole lot we can do other than ask them, well, what are you going to do post exit, so that we can identify the thing that they're avoiding. That's really it. It's making them aware that there's an issue if they aren't aware.
Yeah. And is that something like, we notice you're you're taking a long time to get back to us, or you're not doing this or that? Is it identifying maybe what we're seeing and then saying, is there something else going on? Like, what are you thinking about here? What do and then kind of diving that into the conversation of maybe post sale discussion? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is there's an objection that isn't resolved. It's not being addressed. And unfortunately, the conversation from an advisory standpoint is usually centered around financials. And so the thought that it's okay to talk about the founder's experience is foreign. And so unless somebody opens up that door for them to talk about those things, either by telling a story of somebody else who went through something similar, or by providing some type of resource. And, we've got books and white papers and stuff that people can use as resources to share with them if they don't feel comfortable going deep into the conversation. You open up a door and then hold space for the people to express what they're going through and how they're experiencing it. The thing that's crippling is believing that you're alone. Right. Like, you're the only one that's ever been in this. And so you want to hide it because you think you're supposed to present this person who's excited about being work optional. And the fact that you don't have something to do with that time that you've had, I think, is a bit challenging for people, especially when they've been doing it for so long.
Well, what we're talking about essentially is maybe some doubt. You've developed the concept of the 6 centers of doubt. Can you explain what those are and how they show up, during the process or even after the sale?
Yeah, so we alluded to it earlier. It's self-image, relationship, work, health, prosperity, and significance. We'd say prosperity and not money or financial because it's about the three: time, talent, and treasure. Self-image is very simply, who am I without the business? Relationships are the people you spend the most time with, and understanding what their expectations are. Again, 60% of relationships are typically tied to the business, and they fade once you exit the company. So being able to replace those three people is pretty important. The work is, it usually, post exit usually comes back to the people and the problem that we spoke about earlier. Health is both mental, physical, and for some people spiritual. You want to be well balanced because the stress that you experience during a transaction process is dramatically more intense. than what most people experience while they're running their company. And then significance, because we've already talked about prosperity, is, does my life matter? My life matter because I had all these people on payroll before. My life matter because my company did X amount of dollars in revenue. At least that's what people assign to the life mattering. My life mattered because the phone rang and people asked me for my opinion, or they asked me to make a decision on something. When all those things go away, they're still asking if their life matters, and they need something to be able to point to prove that it does.
Which one of these 6 hits the founders the hardest typically?
So it comes in waves. We actually talk about this in the context of the founder's exit paradox, and we use an iceberg to show it. And so above the surface is all of the positive things, the esteem, the prestige, all these things. Underneath, though, is the 6 centers of doubt. The one that is deepest is self-image, and it shakes everything. It impacts everything. It's an inside-out job. And so the thing that they struggle with most is their self-image, and then it radiates through the others, finally getting to significance and how they're remembered or what their legacy is.
Mm-hmm. That's a good analogy. I love that. Helps you understand that. What what is the advisor's role? How can, whether it's an M&A advisor, wealth manager, an exit planner, a CPA, how can, to kind of, recap and tie up the whole conversation here, how can they support the personal side of the exit planning with the business owner without maybe overstepping and, providing more damage than help? Like, what are some, how can they be part of the solution, not the problem, as these business owners are going through this very, emotional time?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to be honest with them. Let them know that this is a typical experience, right? It's not all rainbows and unicorns. Like, there are things that people experience that most people wouldn't categorize as positive. And you need to understand that, and you need to accept that, and you can't just ignore it. And then the second piece of it is either holding space for them or creating an opportunity for them to get the support that they need because they're aware of the challenges that the client is moving through or working through.
Jerome, this has been amazing. My last question for you is for the business owners out there listening to this show, or specifically advisors who are helping the business owner. If they're about say 12 to 24 months from an exit, what should they be getting clear on now to avoid that post-exit regret?
Yeah, I think they should be identifying their people and their problem so that they understand their purpose, and then figuring out, exploring, as we call it, how to deliver the solution to them.
Amazing. I love it. Jerome, this has been a great conversation. Anything else that you want to say to the guests? Where can they find you and the work that you do, and maybe they can connect with you if they have more questions?
Yeah. We've got a podcast called Your Next, where we just normalize this conversation around the post-exit life and the transaction illusion, founder's exit paradox, and many of the other phrases that we've come up with to describe the experience of Neo. And so that podcast is called Your Next, a guide to finding fulfillment post-exit. And we're on social, specifically LinkedIn, and I'm the only Jerome Myers in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Make sure to check out Jerome's podcast. Like I said, it'll take this conversation just to that next level, and make sure you subscribe to his show as well. We'll put the link to the show in our show notes here. Jerome, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your insights. It's important work that you do for the business owner, because it is such a vital part of the process to understand what you are going to do in a meaningful way post transaction. So thank you so much for joining the show here today.
Nick, it's been an honor. Thanks for having me.
That's all we have for this episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast. Make sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. Pass it on to anybody who you think would benefit from our conversation here today. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or anywhere where you get podcasts. Make sure you get notified of any new episodes that air each week on Thursday morning to stay up to date on all the things that we're doing here at the M&A Mastermind Podcast. Until next time, everybody, take care. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cornerstone International Alliance. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more insights, strategies, and real-life experiences to help you take your M&A game to the next level.